Okay, greetings class. This is Server 2012 and we're working on lesson 3, shared permissions, and I wanted to go over, actually it was NTFS permissions, and I wanted to go over a couple things on the server to help you understand a little bit better about permissions because they can get confusing. So right now I'm remoted into a Server 2012 R2. Um, I'm going to go ahead and try to move the screen down a little bit, so hopefully you see that. And in the bottom here, you'll see a couple items that I want to discuss with you. So the first one is the server manager. In the server manager, the server has roles, all right? And you have to install the roles up here, right? So it's manage, and you'd add or remove a new role. A file server should have the file and storage service role installed on the server. So you simply add a role, click next, finish, and then your file server is set up. This server is already a file server. It has the file and service roles, and then it has an area called shares. Now, if I wanted to create a new share, I simply right click and select new share. If I wanted to see the permissions of the share, I just go to properties, permissions, and this is only the share permissions. This is not NTFS permissions. So what does that mean? It means if I wanted to go on computer and actually map a network drive, right? And this is mapping a network drive. It's a little bit delayed, so just give it a minute here. So if I wanted to map a network drive, I can only map a share, okay? So the share gives me the permission to map, all right? So this is the same server, so I'm not sure that that'll work. So it did. So I'm mapped to that share that I showed you, that Daniel share, right? And that permission gave me. That share permission gave me that permission to map to it. Now, what if I wanted to go into a folder and read something? I would need to have the security permission to do so. Okay, so that can be done in a couple ways, but I'm going to go over a couple more share items. If I go to computer management, and in a server or on a computer, you just type computer management. It's delayed a little bit, so just give it a minute because I'm remoted in, so we're going to have a little bit of latency. And you click on computer management, you can create a share in here as well, a different way, right? I could right click and create a new share. I can go here and create a share. And remember, the share just allows you to map that network drive. So I could access the network drive by mapping to it. That's my X drive, and I can go to it. And you can name the drive whatever you want. But to read the items in that folder, I have to have security permissions. Okay, so there's a couple ways to set that. One way is, again, you can do the computer PC. If you know where the share is, right? I could see where the share, it says E Daniel. So I go to E, I go to Daniel, and I right click on that, and I go to properties, and then I see the security or the NTFS permission. Here, I have people that have access, right? And I assign the access of what they can do over here, right? Primarily, you never want to give anybody full control unless you're an IT personnel. Full control can change everything, right? It can change whether you read, write, or you're in a group, or it can even change the share permissions. So you don't want to do that. The share permission doesn't really matter that much because you're going to restrict it by your security permission. So it doesn't matter if someone could map to your drive. They can't read it, right? Even if you give everyone full control, they can't read the items in there. They can just map to it. So usually I give everyone to change. However, you could also limit that down by putting a name. So the best practice with security permissions, of course, is the principle of least privilege, right? If I wanted to say add somebody to this, I would add a user, and let's say that user is, this is in my domain, let's say that user is this user here. I could set those permissions, the security permissions, and let's say I only want her to read items. I don't want her to be able to go into my folder and write items. I click apply, and then that security permissions takes effect, where now that person can read the items in my folder, right? So the best practice is to only give the permissions that you need and not all the permissions. Now, going even further, and I might have to wait until these permissions run, this folder is inherited. So when I click apply, it's going down through all the subfolders of my folder. So a technique to do would be to limit the structure of the folders, meaning, and I probably have to wait till this, let me cancel out of that, which I probably can't yet. Okay. So a lot of times in a workplace, they'll call this shared folder shared. And then in the root of the shared folder, they'll have things like HR, finance, et cetera, and then they'll give permissions to only those departments inside of those folders. So that's an important thing to understand, is that if you're inheriting permissions all the way down, if you're allowing inheritance, right? If you're enabling inheritance, and I got there by going to advanced, that means that when I do a permission to the top level folder, everything goes down through the folders, and it's running the same permission again because I clicked apply. So I'll try to get out of there. And it's also not very good to cancel permissions in the middle, because usually that results in some busted permissions. So what I'm doing here is not the best practice of canceling those permissions in the middle. But usually you allow someone a top level folder as a map, right? So you give them the shared permissions, and then within those folders you disable inheritance and allow only the certain groups, right? So I'm probably not going to be able to get into that until I've run those permissions. So we'll go ahead and minimize that. We'll show you in Windows 10. I just wanted to make sure you understood the server operating system and those few things. So I've right-clicked. I'm going to permissions. It's taking a minute because it's on the network, and so I'll probably have to wait for that as well, unfortunately. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I changed servers because I was remoted in and I was having difficulty, but I wanted to show you this concept of shared, right? So I allow mapping to this shared folder, but inside of that folder, I have subfolders. And for those subfolders, I allow only specific groups, right? So I allow the group of administrators, or myself as an admin, or domain users. Let's see if I can get one with engineer where there's some groups in there. So in this one, don't have the groups. Let's see if manufacturing engineering has one. So yeah, so here I allow the group of manufacturing engineering to have modify access, right? So I'm not allowing permissions from the shared folder all the way down into these subfolders, because HR may have some confidential information that I don't want manufacturing engineering to get. So I allow them to map to the shared folder, but not get to the HR folder. And that's what the security permissions do, right? You put users in groups, and then those groups will be like a read group, a read write group, or read only group, and then you specify the permissions needed. The other thing is IT doesn't control the data. The departments control the data. So if you want to put a permission to a user on here, let's say the user comes to you and says, hey, I need to get to HR. Well, the first thing you should do as IT is submit that request to the appropriate authority, and that person, the data owner, allows you to access the data, not IT. All right, folks, that's it. I wanted to just clear up some of the security permissions and the NTFS permissions. I apologize for some of those delays in here. I am VPN'd in, so there may have been some delay. Again, thank you very much, and have a great day.